Welcome to my Bake Escape. I know it's not quite fall, but I just couldn't wait. I am sharing my first pumpkin recipe of the season with you, and this is a recipe for delicious, easy to make pumpkin snickerdoodle cookies. This recipe and lots more delicious fall recipes can be found on my website at mybakeescape.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Pinterest at mybakeescape. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please feel free to do so. I appreciate the support. For this recipe, you'll need a can of pumpkin. I like Libby's 100% pumpkin puree. It's my favorite brand to use, but I've also used a Trader Joe's canned pumpkin and it's perfectly fine. So make sure to pick up a can of pumpkin because you're going to need it for this recipe as well as a few others I am going to be releasing soon. For the cookie dough, you will need all-purpose flour, granulated sugar, brown sugar, pumpkin puree, eggs, unsalted butter, vanilla extract, salt, baking soda, and cream of tartar. For the sugar topping, you'll need granulated sugar, salt, ground ginger, ground cloves, ground nutmeg, and ground cinnamon. I always measure out all of my ingredients ahead of time. That way I ensure I have everything I need on hand, and it makes the process so much faster and more enjoyable. So if you're starting out baking and you feel a little intimidated, my biggest tip to you is measure out all of your ingredients, have everything ready so that the process is smooth and more enjoyable. Now that all of the ingredients have been measured out, I'm ready to make the cookie dough. I begin by combining all of the dry ingredients. So to the flour, I add the baking soda, followed by the salt, and then I add in the cream of tartar. I like to use a small whisk to mix all of these ingredients together, but you can also use a fork. I set the dry ingredients to the side and I begin working on the wet ingredients. To a large bowl, I add the room temperature unsalted butter. You can do this step in the bowl of a stand mixer, or if you have a hand mixer like me, you can use that to cream the butter. I like to cream the butter for about a minute before adding the sugars. Once the butter is nice and fluffy and creamy, it's time to add the sugars. So I add both the brown sugar and granulated sugar at once to the butter, and using my hand mixer, I begin to cream these together for about 2 to 3 minutes until the mixture is light and fluffy. Next, I add the eggs and mix those in. Now that the eggs have been mixed in, it's time to add the pumpkin puree. Now that the pumpkin puree has been mixed in, it's time to add the vanilla extract. Now it's time to incorporate the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. And I do this in 3 stages. So I start by adding a little bit of that flour mixture to the butter mixture, and then I mix that in just until the flour has been absorbed. Then I add a little bit more of that flour mixture, mix that in, then I add the rest of that flour mixture and mix that in, and this is what the cookie dough looks like. Using a small spatula, I just give that dough a good mix. It's nice and thick, and then this is going to need to chill in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. So I go ahead and cover the bowl with plastic wrap and place in the refrigerator. While the dough is chilling in the refrigerator, I went ahead and preheated my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I began prepping the cookie sheet. I use parchment paper to lay on the cookie sheet. I have these smaller sheets of parchment paper, so I just layered 2 of them on the cookie sheet. And then I begin working on the sugar topping, which consists of granulated sugar, ground cinnamon, then I have salt, ground cloves, ground nutmeg, and ground ginger. If you have pumpkin pie spice, you can use that instead of the individual spices, but this is very important because this is what's going to give the cookies that pumpkin, fall, delicious flavors, all these spices. The dough has been chilling, and so now I'm going to go ahead and scoop out the cookies by using an ice cream scoop. Then I gently roll the dough between the palms of my hands, place it in the bowl with that spiced sugar topping, roll the dough around a little bit just so that it's coated in all that delicious sugar and spice. Place it on the cookie sheet, and then I went ahead and scooped out the rest. I make sure to only add 5 to 6 cookies to the sheet at one time, spreading them out about 2 inches apart because these will spread in the oven and I don't want them to touch. Once I finish scooping out the cookie dough, I place the entire cookie sheet in the freezer for 5 minutes to chill. While the cookies are chilling, I went ahead and placed all of that leftover canned pumpkin in a container, and I will store this in my refrigerator for up to 4 days. After the cookies have chilled in the freezer for 5 minutes, I place them in the oven and let them bake for 12 minutes. Once the cookies have baked, I place the cookie sheet on a cooling rack and let them sit on the baking sheet for a few minutes. If I try to remove the cookies right now, they are very soft and they may fall apart. Allowing the cookies to sit on the pan for 3 to 4 minutes helps them continue to bake a little bit, and then it makes it a lot easier to transfer to the cooling rack. So after the cookies have sat on that cookie sheet for about 3 to 4 minutes, I went ahead and transferred them to a cooling rack to continue to cool down. Not only do these cookies look delicious, the smell of the spices mixed in with that buttery cookie filled my entire house with a perfect fall scent. You can see that these cookies are loaded with flavor. They have the classic crinkle that a snickerdoodle cookie has, and they are perfectly baked to a golden brown. The edges are a little crispy, but they are also very buttery. And they do have a slight pumpkin color to them, and the flavor is delicious. This is like fall in a cookie. They are chewy and tender, and the pumpkin comes through a little bit, but it's mostly those spices on the top with that sugar. These are delicious. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you try this recipe, please let me know in the comments what you thought. And if you have any questions about this recipe or any other recipe, feel free to leave me a comment. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Well, I'm so excited that we are entering my favorite season of the year, which is fall. I'm going to have lots of delicious recipes coming out. And if you're interested, I do have a fall playlist with lots of other great recipes that I've tried over the years and shared with you. For the full recipes, visit mybakeescape.com. Thank you for watching and have a sweet day.